My name is Luz Maria Calderon, and I am a Cuban-American living in Miami, Florida. I came to the United States when I was very young, so Miami is the only home I really know. I grew up in a vibrant neighborhood full of life and noise. The streets are always busy, with cars, buses, and public jeeps circulating day and night. The sound of traffic has become a kind of background music to my life. You know, Miami is an incredible place. Latin culture is everywhere, in the smells, the sounds, the colors. This has always made me feel a connection to Cuba, even though I'm so far away. Since I was little, I learned to respect the city's heavy traffic. Here, you need to always be alert, because Miami drivers are known for their haste. Before the accident that changed my life, I was a chemical engineer. I loved my work and led a very normal life. I was married to Ramon, my life partner, and together we built a comfortable and happy routine. I never imagined that my life could change so drastically in a single day. It was February 1986, a hot and sunny afternoon like so many others in Miami. I decided to go out and buy a gift for Ramon. Our wedding anniversary was coming up and I wanted to surprise him with something special. I remember leaving home thinking about how good life was, how fulfilled I felt with our routine. On the way back home, something made me stop at a convenience store. I don't know how to explain it, but I felt a kind of impulse as if an invisible force was guiding me. Now, looking back, I realized that fate was directing me towards what was to come. I left the store and headed to the bus stop. I was excited to go home and show Ramon the gift. Traffic was normal for a weekday in Miami, heavy, noisy, but flowing. I did what I always did. I looked both ways before crossing the street. The path seemed clear, so I took the first step towards the opposite sidewalk. It was at that moment that my life changed forever. In a matter of seconds, the world as I knew it disappeared, and I was launched on a journey that would completely transform my existence. It all happened so fast. A Jeep, which appeared to be under control, suddenly changed lanes. It was coming straight towards me, and there was no time to react. The impact was brutal, as if I had been hit by a train. My body was thrown several meters as if I weighed nothing. Still dazed from the first impact, I barely had time to process what was happening when I realized the Jeep was coming back. The driver, for some reason I couldn't understand, seemed determined to hit me again. I felt the second impact, even stronger than the first. I was thrown again, bouncing off the asphalt like a rubber ball. The pain was indescribable. Every part of my body screamed in agony. I could taste the metallic taste of blood in my mouth and my vision was blurry. The sounds around me seemed distant as if I were submerged in water. I heard screams, horns, the sound of tires screeching on the asphalt, but everything seemed to happen in slow motion. The Jeep driver, instead of stopping to help, accelerated toward me once again. At that moment, I thought it was the end. I closed my eyes, waiting for the final impact that would certainly end my life. But then, something inexplicable happened. I felt a lightness come over me, as if all the weight in my body had suddenly disappeared. The pain that consumed me seconds before was simply gone. When I opened my eyes, I saw something that defied all logic and reason. I was floating above my own body. Suddenly, I was observing the entire scene from above as if I was watching a movie. I saw my body lying on the asphalt, motionless and bloody. The Jeep kept coming towards me, the driver with a panicked expression on his face. People began to crowd around, some screaming for help, others paralyzed by shock. The strangest thing of all was that I didn't feel scared. I was completely calm, as if I was observing something that had nothing to do with me. I noticed a silver thread that connected my floating self to my physical body. Instinctively, I knew that thread was my connection to life, and that while it existed, I was not yet completely gone. It was at that moment that I heard a voice. It wasn't a sound that came from outside, but something that resonated within me and around me at the same time. The voice was powerful yet gentle, and conveyed a sense of peace and security that I had never experienced before. The voice told me that it was not my time yet, that I had a mission to fulfill on Earth. I didn't fully understand what that meant, but I felt it was true. As the voice spoke, I saw something that defied all the laws of physics I knew as an engineer. My body, which should have been seriously injured and unable to move, began to crawl out of the path of the Jeep. It was as if an invisible force was pulling my body to safety. The Jeep driver tried to hit me again, but it was as if there was an invisible barrier protecting me. The vehicle swerved at the last second, almost overturning with the sudden maneuver. As this was happening, I began to feel a pull towards something beyond the accident scene. A bright light began to form around me, enveloping me in comforting warmth. The light was so pure, so welcoming, that all my worries about what was happening below simply disappeared. The light that enveloped me was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't like sunlight or light from a lamp. It was a living, pulsating light that seemed to emanate love and understanding. As I merged with this light, I felt a deep and absolute peace. There was no more pain, fear, or worry. All that existed was a feeling of unconditional love and total acceptance. In this state of bliss, I began to have visions. They were like flashes of a future that had not yet happened. I saw the world plunged into total darkness, a great blackout that affected all nations. It wasn't just a lack of electricity, but a complete collapse of everything that kept modern society running. The images were terrifying. I saw people lost, not knowing what to do, struggling to survive in a world that had changed overnight. Amidst the chaos, I noticed a small group of powerful individuals who appeared to be manipulating events, using the situation to increase their control over the world's population. The vision changed, and I saw something even more disturbing. With the blackout came a severe food shortage. The market shelves were empty, and people's despair was palpable. Entire families suffered, children cried from hunger, and the social order as we knew it was quickly falling apart. But then, just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, the vision changed again. I saw a time of renewal after the period of difficulties. Order would be restored, and a new period of peace and harmony would emerge on Earth. It was as if humanity had learned difficult but necessary lessons and finally found a path to unity and understanding. As these visions flashed before me, I felt a deep understanding that this was all part of a greater plan. It was not my role to judge or try to change these events, but rather to prepare and help others prepare for what was to come. The voice that had spoken to me before resurfaced clearer than ever. He told me that I had been chosen to be a messenger, to help guide people through the difficult times ahead. I didn't fully understand what this meant, but I felt the weight of responsibility that was being placed upon me. As suddenly as it had begun, the light experience began to dissipate. I felt myself being pulled back into the physical world, as if I was diving back into reality. The silver thread connecting me to my body began to pull me tighter. When I returned to my body, the pain hit me like a tidal wave. It was almost unbearable. Every nerve in my body screamed in agony. But at the same time, there was a deep certainty within me that I would survive, that I still had a lot to do in this world. I opened my eyes and saw a face above me. It was an elderly lady, who I later discovered was called Doña Alba. She held my hand and spoke to me, although I could barely understand her words. I saw panic in his eyes, but also fierce determination. Doña Alba had witnessed the entire accident and without hesitation ran to help me. She stopped the Jeep driver from fleeing and called an ambulance. As I struggled to remain conscious, I heard his steady voice giving instructions to those around him organizing help. The Jeep driver, realizing the seriousness of what he had done, tried to escape. But Doña Alba, with strength that seemed impossible for her age, stopped him. She screamed for help, and some passers-by managed to detain the man until the police arrived. I vaguely remember being placed in an ambulance. The flashing lights, the urgent voices of the paramedics, the sound of the siren, it all seemed distant and unreal. I was floating between consciousness and unconsciousness, still feeling the effects of the experience I had just had. At the hospital, the doctors were shocked to see that I was still alive. From the witnesses' accounts and the severity of my injuries, they didn't understand how I had survived. They did several tests, looking for internal bleeding, fractures, anything that could explain the miracle of my survival. But to everyone's surprise, including mine, there were no fatal injuries. Of course, I was hurt, with bruises all over my body and a few broken bones, but nothing that justified the violence of the accident I had suffered. Doctors called it a miracle. I knew it was more than that. It was the result of the intervention I had experienced during my near-death experience. The certainty that I had been protected and saved for a greater purpose was unshakable. In the days and weeks following the accident, I began to notice significant changes in myself. It wasn't just physical changes, although my body was recovering surprisingly quickly. They were deeper changes that affected my mind and spirit. The first thing I noticed was a new sensitivity to the energies around me. It was as if a sixth sense had awakened. I could feel people's emotions even when they tried to hide them. At times it was almost overwhelming, as if I was tuned into a frequency that picked up every feeling around me. Furthermore, I developed a kind of keen intuition. I began to have premonitions about future events, especially those related to the death of people close to me. At first it scared me. I didn't know how to deal with this type of information. But over time, I learned to accept this gift and use it to comfort and prepare people. My worldview has also changed drastically. Before the accident, I was a very rational person, focused on facts and logic. After all, she was a chemical engineer. But now, I saw connections where before I had only seen coincidences. The world seemed more interconnected, more full of meaning and purpose. My interest in science has not diminished, but has expanded to include areas that I previously considered unscientific. I began studying the connections between science and spirituality, fascinated by the ways in which these two seemingly opposing fields could complement each other. Another significant change was my attitude towards life and death. Before, I was afraid of death, like most people. Now, although I didn't want to die, I was no longer afraid. I knew there was something beyond this life, something beautiful and full of peace. It gave me new courage to live fully, to enjoy every moment. The visions I saw during my near-death experience have never left me. They have become a constant part of my life, influencing my daily decisions and actions. The image of the great global blackout and its consequences was always present in my mind, pushing me to prepare myself and help others prepare too. I started making changes in my everyday life. I learned about self-sufficiency and started stocking up on non-perishable foods. I installed solar panels in my home and learned about alternative ways to generate energy. I also started growing my own vegetable garden, something I never imagined doing before the accident. But I didn't stop there. I felt I had a responsibility to share what I had seen, to warn people about the challenges that lay ahead. At first it was difficult. People looked at me suspiciously when I talked about a future blackout or food shortages. Some thought I had gone crazy after the accident, but I knew I couldn't stay silent. I started talking to friends, family, coworkers. Little by little, some people started to listen. I don't know if they completely believed what I was saying, but something in my conviction made them at least consider the possibility. I organized small study and preparation groups. I taught people how to preserve food, how to use resources more efficiently, how to prepare for possible emergencies. I didn't want to create panic, but rather promote a mindset of preparedness and resilience. As time passed, I noticed that the people around me began to change. Even those who didn't fully believe in my visions began to adopt more sustainable and self-sufficient practices. It was as if somehow my message was resonating on a deeper level. At the same time, I continued to study and research. I wanted to understand more about the connections between science and spirituality that I had noticed during my experience. This led me to explore areas I never imagined would interest me: quantum physics, neuroscience, consciousness studies. The more I learned, the more I saw the connections between all aspects of existence. This quest for knowledge was not just to satisfy my curiosity. I felt that each new learning helped me prepare better for the future I had envisioned. It was like I was putting together a puzzle. Each piece of information helping me see the bigger picture more clearly. Sometimes I wondered if I was doing enough. The visions of the future were so vivid, so urgent. Was I truly fulfilling the mission given to me during my near-death experience? But then I remembered the words I heard in that light. My role was not to change the future, but to help people prepare for it. And so, day after day, I continued my journey of preparing and sharing. I didn't know exactly when the events I saw would happen, but I knew I needed to be ready. And most importantly, I needed to help others be ready too. As time passed after the accident, I began to notice that the changes in me went beyond my new perspective on life and visions of the future. I developed abilities that I can only describe as, well, supernatural. The first thing I noticed was related to my prayers. I have always been a person of faith, but now, when I prayed for someone, especially women who wanted to have children, something extraordinary happened. The women I prayed for got pregnant. Not once or twice, but every time. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but it soon became clear that there was a pattern. The pregnancies that followed my prayers were not normal. Women faced complications during pregnancy, and babies were always born by cesarean section. And interestingly, they were almost always boys. I didn't understand why this happened. Why did my prayers result in complicated pregnancies? Why couldn't babies be born naturally? And why were the majority male? These were questions that I had no answers for, but I accepted as part of this inexplicable gift I had received. Word of my miracle prayers quickly spread throughout the community. Soon, women I barely knew began reaching out to me, begging for my prayers. It was a huge responsibility. I knew that by praying for them, I was potentially changing their lives forever, but the gifts didn't stop there. One day, a friend came to me desperate. His van had been stolen and he didn't know what to do. Without thinking much, I closed my eyes and focused on the vehicle. Suddenly, I had a clear vision. I saw the van having an accident, but the driver leaving unharmed. I told my friend what I had seen. He was skeptical, of course, but a few days later he returned with surprising news. The van had been found, completely destroyed after an accident. And just as I had predicted, the driver, the thief, had walked away without a scratch. These events made me question a lot about the nature of reality. As an engineer, I have always sought logical and scientific explanations for everything. But now, I was experiencing things that challenged everything I knew about the world. I began to wonder, did the accident really give me supernatural powers? Or did he just awaken abilities that we all have but rarely access? I didn't have definitive answers, but I knew that somehow the accident had connected me to an aspect of reality that I hadn't been able to perceive before. I decided to accept these gifts as part of my new reality. I didn't actively seek them out, but when someone needed help and I felt like I could do something, I didn't hesitate. I learned to trust this new intuition, this connection with something bigger than myself. At the same time, these gifts brought me a new responsibility. I realized I had the power to influence people's lives in profound ways. This made me even more aware of the importance of using these skills wisely and compassionately. And so, in addition to preparing myself for the future I had envisioned, I began to navigate this new world of supernatural possibilities. It was a challenging, sometimes scary, but also incredibly enriching path. Each new event, each new manifestation of these gifts, made me feel more connected to the universe and the greater purpose that was revealed to me during my near-death experience. With all these changes in my personal and spiritual life, it was inevitable that my professional life would also be affected. Before the accident, I was passionate about chemical engineering. It was my career, my calling. But now, something had changed. It's not that I didn't enjoy engineering anymore, but I felt like my path was taking me in another direction. I began to become deeply interested in mathematics and science in general. Not just the practical and applied aspects that I knew as an engineer, but the theoretical foundations, the big questions that science tries to answer about the nature of the universe. At the same time, my new interest in spirituality led me to explore religious texts, especially the Bible. And that's when something extraordinary happened. I began to see connections between the scientific principles I was studying and the spiritual truths I found in the scriptures. It was as if a veil had been lifted from my eyes. Where before I saw science and religion as separate and often conflicting fields, I now saw harmony and complementarity. The mathematical patterns I found in nature seemed to echo descriptions of creation in sacred texts. The laws of physics seemed to reflect deep spiritual principles. This new perspective filled me with excitement and purpose. I felt like I had found my new calling, exploring and sharing these connections between science and spirituality. I decided to make a transition in my career. I left my job as an engineer and started teaching math and science. At first, it was a challenge. Teaching was very different from working in a laboratory or an industrial plant, but I soon discovered that I loved it. There was something incredibly rewarding about seeing my students' eyes light up when they understood a difficult concept or when they made a connection they had never realized before. But I didn't limit myself to just the standard curriculum. I began incorporating discussions about the intersections between science and spirituality into my classes, not in a dogmatic or imposing way, but as an invitation to reflection and questioning. Many of my students were fascinated by this approach. For some, it was the first time they had seen someone talk about science and religion not as opposites, but as two sides of the same coin. Of course, not everyone agreed with my ideas, and that was fine. My goal was not to convince anyone, but rather to encourage critical thinking and openness to new perspectives. Alongside teaching, I started doing my own research. I immersed myself in studies on the relationship between consciousness and quantum reality, on the mathematical patterns found in nature and in sacred scriptures, on the philosophical implications of the latest scientific discoveries. This new professional path brought me a satisfaction that I had never experienced before. I felt like I was really making a difference, not just preparing my students for exams, but helping them develop a more holistic and integrated view of the world. And the amazing thing is that this work aligned perfectly with the mission I felt I was given during my near-death experience. It was helping people prepare for the future, not just in practical terms, but also expanding their minds and hearts to new possibilities. Each day in the classroom, each new discovery in my research, made me feel more connected to the greater purpose I had glimpsed in that light. It was like every piece of the puzzle of my life was finally falling into place. Looking back on everything that has happened since that fateful day, in February 1986, I sometimes wonder if the person I was before the accident would recognize who I have become. The change has been so profound, so complete, that sometimes it feels like I've lived two different lives. The loss of my husband, Ramon, a few years after the accident, was a pivotal moment in this journey. I expected to feel an overwhelming pain and emptiness impossible to fill. But to my surprise, what I felt was calm acceptance. Not that I didn't miss him. I do every day. But my near-death experience had given me a different perspective on life and death. I knew that Ramon was fine, that he had passed to the other side of existence that I had glimpsed. This acceptance of death does not mean that I do not value life. On the contrary, each day has become even more precious to me. I live with an intensity and purpose I have never known before. Every moment is an opportunity to learn, to grow, to help someone. The visions of the future I saw during my experience remain vivid in my mind. The great blackout, the food shortages, the chaos. I know these events are yet to come. I don't know exactly when they will happen, but I feel like the time is approaching. This awareness of what is to come could be too heavy a burden to carry. But strangely, it isn't. I feel at peace knowing that I am doing everything I can to prepare and help others prepare too. It's not just physical preparation, stocking up on food, learning survival skills, but also spiritual and emotional preparation. Through my work as a teacher, the conversations I have with people, the prayers I say, I feel like I am planting seeds. Seeds of resilience, of compassion, of a deeper understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. I don't know exactly how these seeds will flourish in the future, but I have faith that they will make a difference when the time comes. Sometimes I wonder if people see me as crazy, a former engineer who now talks about near-death experiences, visions of the future and connections between science and spirituality. But the truth is, I've never felt saner, more connected to reality, not just the physical reality we can see and touch, but the deeper reality that permeates everything. Looking to the future, I know there are enormous challenges ahead. The visions I had were not of an easy path, but I also saw the light at the end of the tunnel, the period of renewal and harmony that will come after the difficulties. It is this vision that keeps me hopeful, that gives me the strength to continue my work day after day. I don't know exactly what my role will be when the events I saw begin to unfold. Perhaps I am called to lead, to comfort, to teach, or perhaps my role is simply to be a calming presence amidst the chaos, someone who can remind others that there is something greater than our immediate circumstances. Whatever the future brings, I know I'm ready. Not because I'm stronger or wiser than others, but because I understand that we are all part of something bigger. My near-death experience showed me that there is a purpose in everything, even the things we can't understand at the moment. Sometimes when I look up at the night sky, I remember that light that enveloped me during my experience. I feel a deep connection to the universe, a certainty that no matter what happens, everything will be okay in the end. Not because the challenges won't be real or difficult, but because there is a greater order, a plan that goes beyond our immediate understanding. I continue to prepare every day, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually as well. I meditate, study, teach, help others however I can. Every day is an opportunity to strengthen not only myself, but also those around me. I believe this is how we build the resilience necessary to face what is to come. Sometimes I wonder if people really understand the urgency of the situation. I see so many living their lives as if nothing will change, as if the world as we know it will continue forever. Part of me wants to shake them, make them see what I saw. But I know that everyone has their own path, their own time to awaken to these realities. My role, I believe, is not to force anyone to believe what I say, but rather to be present, to be prepared, and to offer help and guidance to those who seek it. It's like I'm a lighthouse. I can't force ships to come to me, but I can make sure my light is always on, guiding those in need. As I get ready for bed each night, I say a silent prayer. I am grateful for the life that was given back to me on that fateful day. I am grateful for the opportunity to make a difference, even if it is in a small way. And I ask for strength to continue my journey, to be up to the task entrusted to me. I don't know exactly when the events I saw in my vision will begin to unfold. It could be tomorrow, it could be years from now. But I know that when they arrive, I will be ready. And I hope from the bottom of my heart that my work, my words, my life, have helped others to be ready too. The future can seem scary when we look at it through the prism of fear and uncertainty, but when we see it as an opportunity for growth, for unity, for rediscovering what really matters, it becomes not something to be feared, but something to embrace. So here I am, Luz Maria Calderon, a woman who died and came back, a woman who saw beyond the veil that separates this life from the next. I am here, standing on the threshold between the world we know and the world to come. And my message to everyone who will listen is simple. Do not be afraid. Get ready, yes. Be vigilant, yes. But don't let fear paralyze you. For beyond the darkness that lies ahead, there is a light I saw, a light I know. And that light, that unconditional love that I experienced, is waiting for us all. No matter what happens, no matter how difficult things get, that light never goes out. And it is with this certainty that I face each new day, with gratitude for the past, attention to the present, and hope for the future. Because I know that in the end, everything is part of a bigger plan. A plan that, for some reason I still don't fully understand, I was invited to participate in. And so I move on, one step at a time, one day at a time, prepared for whatever comes, but always keeping my eyes fixed on that light.